This is not uncommon in college football where we have the conversations of could two teams from the same conference make it to the CFP? And it's been proven that it works when Georgia and Alabama have gone. And then last year, Ohio State and Michigan have gone. And we're still kind of having those conversations right now where if Alabama somehow wins over an undefeated Georgia team, are you not keeping both them out? Or if somehow the best resume is Ohio State, but they lose to Michigan, are they still in the running? It's time to also have that conversation about Oregon and Washington both making it to the CFP this year. If you're brand new, welcome on into the channel. My name is Cole Thompson. I'm a radio show host based in Houston, and I talk college football daily. I talk NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, but I love talking college football. And if this is the type of content you enjoy, this is the channel made for you. So hit the subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me what you think of the chances of Oregon and Washington making the CFP. Tell your friends, your family, your sister, your brother, everybody about this channel. Because if we get to 1,000 subscribers by November 15th, I'm going to do it. I'm going to shave my head live on air. We do 3 live shows a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and let's talk college football. By the way, mustache right here. Movember is going on right now. This is not a sponsor deal. This is just me talking about personal experience. Men's suicide awareness is growing at an alarming rate. So is men's testicular cancer and prostate cancer. If you would like to donate, go ahead and visit Movember.com or click in the link in my bio down below. Is there a scenario where Washington and Oregon both could make the CFP? Yes. It is slim. It is almost uncommon and unheralded to think of, but there is a scenario, and it's one way and only one way. But before we do any of that, I want to explain why I believe this conversation needs to be on. Oregon right now is playing like one of the best teams in college football, and they have ever since the loss to Washington and Seattle. You're seeing a Heisman caliber quarterback in Bo Nix. You're watching exceptional line play, both offensively and defensively. You're seeing the defense turn the corner underneath Dan Lanning. You've had great rapport with Troy Franklin as the #1 wide receiver. You have a good ground game, and the schedule does bode pretty well in your favor. Not saying it's completely unlosable, but you have games against USC. You have games against Oregon State and Arizona State. You should run the table in that. The thing is that this is an Oregon team that means business, that is doing everything asked of them, and they may have the best loss on the resume. They really might. I would argue that even though Texas' double-digit win over Alabama is impressive for the Crimson Tide, Texas still is finding ways to put themselves down and out of the count, and they're just not seeing the execution or flip the switch. That's what's going on in Austin right now. So Oregon, to me, actually feels like the most impressive loss. And they have the most culture win over Utah by going into Rice-Eccles Stadium. So they're a good team. Washington, if Washington runs the table, we're basically looking at a TCU scenario. We are basically saying, well, they have a win over a very good Arizona team that now has finally turned the corner, and they look like they may finish in the top 5 among teams in the Pac-12. They have a win over Oregon. They're going to have a win over a ranked Oregon State team. They already have a win over a USC ranked team. And we're really going to punish you because if you didn't win the Pac-12, but you have a Heisman Trophy quarterback and Michael Penix Jr., one of the best dynamic passing attacks in the country, and you finally found a rhythm on the ground game with Dylan Johnson. Yeah, no, I don't think so. Now, here's what has to happen. You need 2 conferences to have 2 losses as the conference champion. That's what has to occur. Whether that be a 10-2 that goes 11-2 Oklahoma State team, or that be a 10-2 Louisville team that somehow beats up on Florida State. Either way that occurs, that's what's going to happen. You have to have at least 2 conference champions with 2 losses. Because even if you watch this Penn State beat up on Michigan and they get the loss, and then say Ohio State loses to Michigan and Penn State runs the table and they go 11-1 and then they represent the Big Ten, they're an 11-1 team. They're going to the college football playoff. When it comes to the SEC, you're looking at similar scenarios, but honestly, what would have to happen is Ole Miss would have to get a win this weekend over Georgia. Georgia would then have to either lose to Tennessee next week on the road in Neyland Stadium. That way, you would have Tennessee already in the SEC championship game, or someone would have to beat Georgia. That way, Alabama wins, and Alabama still would have to get another loss. I don't think that that's happening against Kentucky. I don't think it's happening against Auburn. So you would have to have a two-loss team there, and I don't know if it will. Or you would have to be able to see Florida State lose 2 games and then still win the ACC. So that's the scenario, is that you would have to have a two-loss team win at least 2 conferences. It is plausible. The way that Oklahoma State is playing right now, there is an argument that they can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the Big 12. And the main thing is, from a talent standpoint, Ollie Gordon is not like most running backs. He is able to change the game in an instant. Alan Bowman did a great job in Bedlam being able to set up red zone plays to where they just ran the football. He threw for over 390 yards. Like, that's a huge advantage to him. And I think that if they continue to play their game and their standard, they're running the table and they are going to go to Arlington. Right now, if the season were to end today, they would hold the tiebreaker over Oklahoma and they would hold the tiebreaker over Kansas. And all you got to do is get inside the 10. Once you're there, number 0 is not going to be stopped from finding the end zone. Or they're going to find ways to put up field goals, and all you have to do is get critical stops against Quinn Ewers, Jonathan Brooks, CJ Baxter, and you hold this offense and you win. You're not going to the playoff, but you certainly are taking Texas out of it, because that would be a 2-loss team. Or say Texas finds a way to lose a game to TCU, they run the show and they go undefeated the rest of the way, but they're 10-2 and they become Big 12 champs. They knock themselves out. From a talent standpoint, Oregon would have one of the more impressive ways to end the season if they were to win the Pac-12. And that's the final thing. Oregon has to win the Pac-12. They can't lose. You can't have Washington win twice and Oregon be rewarded. It won't happen. But if they came back and they got a win over Oregon State, they got a win over USC, they got a win over Utah, they get a rematch win over Washington, you're not keeping the Pac-12 out. And then you'd make the same argument that Washington, because it did its job during the regular season, just like TCU, we're not going to punish you. We're going to give you a shot because you handled business. And it would be one thing to argue this on most years of the Pac-12, but this is a dangerous Pac-12. And there's a lot of teams that kind of fall in like that middle tier, but they're still good. They're still exceptionally played well. I mean, Arizona finally has a rhythm and an identity. UCLA is going to be able to probably pull off one more upset along the way. You have Utah. Utah's playing with Bryson Barnes as a quarterback, but their defense still is sound, and they maybe are going to be able to upset Washington. You have a good team, in my opinion, in USC offensively. Defensively, best of luck to you. But all these teams are kind of middle tier, and you can't find yourself slipping at the wrong time if you want to be able to claim the title. It just doesn't happen. Oregon State learned that the hard way. Oregon State nearly lost to Colorado, and they did lose to Arizona. So all of this shit can still happen. But if we're going to be completely real for a second, if 2 teams are 2-loss conference champions, what's the argument of leaving out a Pac-12 champion Oregon and a 12-1 with its only loss coming in the Pac-12 championship, a game that Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State won't be able to play in? Washington team. You have to remember that. Washington goes, Ohio State can't. Michigan can't. Penn State can't. One of those teams is going to be left out. How are you rewarding that? Because what? They lost one game? No. I'm giving the nod to Washington. So if this occurs, and this is the way the College Football Playoff Committee works, and the way we see the rankings, a 10-2 Louisville team, they lose one more game, or a 10-2 Texas team, or a 10-2 Oklahoma State team, they win the ACC and Big 12 respectively, you put those 2 win. If there's a massive upset where Iowa's defense just holds both Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan to no points, and it's a 3-0 field goal, and they win the Big 10, Washington and Oregon are both in. 2 conferences with 2-loss teams as their champions opens the avenue for every other conference to have a shot of getting 2 teams in. And if I were a voter today, I would give the nod to Washington and I would give the nod to Oregon. Oregon's playing the best football of all right now, of any team in the country that I've seen. And at the same time, Washington would have done its job throughout the regular season, just like TCU. And if you want to make sure that the College Football Committee gets it right, you can't use the argument, well, look at TCU last year, look at Washington this year. It's the exact same analogy and the exact same narrative. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching that video. Don't hit the X button yet. Make sure you hit subscribe to keep up with all of our daily content found on Just Saying It and anything else that we post on this channel. Bye.